Guys, I got a special treat for you today on the Bill Sang podcast. I've got my lovely wife, Melissa, with me, and we're going to be talking politics and football. So I look forward to talking with you all on the Bill Sang podcast. Over the past couple of weeks, maybe the past month or so, I've had an awful lot of fun talking about Donald Trump, the inauguration, and the football season. And sadly, one of those two things has to come to an end, at least for a little while. That being that we are at the conclusion of the NFL Super Bowl season, at the end of the NFL season, with the conclusion of the Super Bowl. And what a show it was, really. And to help me to talk about these topics today, I have my wife, my lovely wife, Melissa Sang, on the program with me to talk about the Super Bowl, to talk about Trump and the administration, everything that's happening in there. And, I think that today that she's coming in more informed and more prepared than what I am, really. So, Melissa, how are you doing right now? Are you excited to talk about these topics?
Yes, I fully enjoyed watching the Super Bowl, and I am not the most educated in football, but I have grown to like it, and I think it was a great game.
Yeah, don't let her fool you, because she throws the ball more accurately than me, and she punts it more accurately. So she's very well equipped in the game of football. Now, mind you, in terms of the knowledge of like what a first down is, I don't know. Do you know what a first down is?
Yeah, kind of.
She knows what a first down is. That's she's kind of come a long ways and learned a lot of the terminology as time has gone on, especially watching our boys play football. Did you enjoy watching Jaden play football this past season?
Yes, I tell people I enjoyed mostly when he was on the sidelines, because then I knew he was all right.
She was the one mom that was cheering that he was taken out of the game because he was out because he was on defense or he was on offense. Like, all right, good, he's coming out for right now. But no, she in all seriousness, you enjoyed watching him though, right? Getting tackles and succeeding and all that.
Yes, and he almost got a touchdown.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. So
yeah, and watching Carter was pretty fun too. Yeah, I thought that his season was pretty exciting as well. I mean, their seasons were a lot shorter, obviously, than the NFL and the college and all that. And man, you got to watch both the Super Bowl this year and the NCAA National Championship. So that's quite a jump in terms of your football viewership. And you got to see the Ohio State Buckeyes win the national championship against Notre Dame. Again, I think one of the most that will go down as one of the most iconic games ever. Despite the fact I thought the Buckeyes handled them well. And then the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Was it surprising to you what happened in that game?
Well, first of all, I wanted to comment on OSU. I thought that was pretty awesome because Will Howard, he looked like a professional out there, and it was really amazing to watch him. And the fact that he's a Christian, I think, is pretty cool too. But about the Super Bowl, what was it?
What was it about the Super Bowl? I asked if you were surprised about what happened.
Well, I never watched the Eagles play before, but they pretty much dominated. So that was fun to watch them. I mean, they're really skilled, and the Chiefs Mahomes showed at the end that he still, was up there, but. I was just surprised to see the Eagles, how well they played together, and their coach seems like a great guy.
The funny thing is, I remember watching the Eagles and the Chiefs play a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl, and it actually went the other way, that the Chiefs came out on top in a very close game. And the funny thing was, in watching that, I told everybody afterwards that I believed that the Eagles were actually the better team that year, but the Chiefs just did a great job rallying their team, playing together, that they brought their team together to come through with the victory that year. This year, my oh my, I don't know, were the Eagles really the better team? Honestly, I cannot convince myself that the Eagles were actually the better team. I think that the Chiefs were still the better team between the two, but just something just wasn't clicking there. The Eagles were just all over them on offense, on defense. I mean, on the special teams, even just no matter what it seemed like the Chiefs would do. And frankly, I mean, despite the fact that Andy Reid's a great coach, I would say even on the coaching end that everything, just nothing went the way for the Chiefs, and it was just I mean, it's one of those things people don't understand. It's not because the Chiefs are not a good team. They're a great team. I think they're one of the. I mean, but you look at Tom Brady's career, for instance, when he played for the Patriots. He didn't win the Super Bowl every year. And sometimes in his best seasons, as far as record-wise, he lost the Super Bowl. So seeing the Chiefs lose, it's one of those things that's unfortunate, but it's one of those things that also happens. So I don't think it's a reflection of them at all. And I thought there was an awful lot that happened surrounding the game. The nature of the game has really changed as the entertainment is more message focused than what it is just for pure entertainment, to make people happy, to make people have a good time. And I think that very much relates to what's happening in the world today. What's happening in America today is now we have shifted from the Biden administration, which, in my opinion, probably yours as well, made some horrible, horrible decisions for our country, really drove us into a hole. But now we see some things changing. What sort of changes are you noticing, Melissa, that either concern you or you're excited about? Or
I'm excited because I see even in athletics, the players praising God, they come out, as saying that they're Christians, and they do that on national television, and I think that's just amazing because that allows kids to have somebody to look up to, and I think a lot has changed and will continue to change because Donald Trump is a Christian, and that gives a new perspective, I think, for people in our country. Everything we saw in the last 4 years just was all about transgenderism, just promoting evil. And so that, reflected in what we saw. And it was a little bit scary. And so now we're seeing so much more positive things, more Christian things come out. And I think that's really great to see.
Yeah, and I think that despite what you might think, you made a very controversial statement saying Donald Trump is a Christian, and I wholeheartedly agree with you there. Not a lot of people get that, though. I mean, they look at some of his policies, take like his stance on immigration and the fact that he wants to deport people who are here illegally. And a lot of people think that, hey, that's a very un-Christian thing to do. I would disagree with them personally. I think that they don't understand the nature of law and order and how Christians, I don't know if you've noticed this, Melissa, but I noticed that back when we had Barack Obama and even Joe Biden in the White House, that what lots of Christians would say that, well, we're supposed to submit to the authorities that are above us. Okay, and then all of a sudden Donald Trump gets in office and it's like, no, he's not Christian and what he's doing isn't right. And I'm telling you, like, some of the posts I'm seeing on Facebook are a little bit frightening because it almost seems as though people do want to see the man assassinated. It frightens me that this is the attitude of people, and even people that are calling themselves Christians.
Yeah, and you see, obviously, Donald Trump observes the National Day of Prayer. He just, created the White House Faith Office, and just so many things he's doing that shows that, he's honoring God, and, he, everything that he says and does really aligns with being a Christian. And he works, with Franklin Graham just to help people, all over the country. And that's so much more than just what we saw in the past.
Yeah, and maybe you've already said, what do you think the best thing that he's going to do as president is going to be?
Oh, I think just helping people to see the greatness of our country comes from us being Christians, and just so many things, so many good things come from that, and he's already showing that.
I released an episode of the podcast the other day that actually talked about, I think his name's Sam Wilkins, the actor that's playing the new Captain America. And I found it fascinating what he had to say in terms of, and I'm not holding it entirely against him. Again, he's in Hollywood. He's entrenched. He's immersed in this culture, the swamp that is Hollywood, actually. And so he's surrounded by a lot of people saying things similar to what he's thinking and saying right now, namely that Captain America does not necessarily have to be referring to America. That America in the name Captain America could actually be symbolic of values like integrity, honesty, bravery, honesty, things of that sort. And it's funny because on the one hand, I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, wait, those values are the values that Americans build our culture around. I think that in other countries that it's more so that they're happy when their leaders have integrity, but for Americans, I feel like that our standard is that we as Americans want to have integrity as individuals, as just plain citizens. But then when you get up to the higher offices, we expect them to be a higher representation of those sorts of things. So yeah, I think that yeah, I can't remember what it was that you said that made me think along those lines there. But being an American, oh, I remember what it is, because when it comes to Christian values and American values, that they shouldn't be too far removed from each other. You saw me watching a trailer for the new Superman movie not too long ago, and I think it looks fantastic, first of all. But again, I read the tagline, and it said, a hero who is fighting for truth, justice, and all of humanity. Or the human way. I'm like, wait, no.
It's supposed to be the American way?
It's supposed to be the American way. And I'm just thinking, guys, come on. America's founding was something good. When they said truth and justice, those are American values. And I could go on a rant like probably like nobody else, that I think that those values in many cultures are lost because of how oppressed that they are. They don't experience life the same way that Americans do, through the lens of freedom. And I mean, when you have freedom, you're able to live with integrity and honesty and all those things, because you don't have to cheat in order to eat. Wow, that's a good line.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why it was such a statement that Donald Trump went to the Super Bowl, because a lot of the American values go into football, in the NFL, and, hard work and integrity. Those guys have a lot of character. They work as a team, and that is a lot of what makes America great, being able to work together and be exceptional at something.
The funny thing about Donald Trump, I don't think people focus on this with him too much. I mean, I know that he's had certain physical limitations that prevented him from competing in certain sports, but I tell you what, he is a big fan of men's sports. I mean, granted, funny thing is, he's doing a lot of great things for women's sports right now, and that's what's getting all the talk, which is good. I think that's great that he's doing those things. But what he doesn't get a lot of credit for, he's a huge patron of very masculine sports. UFC, he was talking to Joe Rogan, and I tell you what, he was able to talk, pun intended, blow for blow, with Joe Rogan on his podcast about different UFC fighters. I mean, and I was impressed. Like, he was actually tracking like the names. I mean, I didn't know who some of these guys were, but he was talking in terms of like, who do you think is the greatest fighter of all time, Joe? And Joe listed off a couple of names. He's like, oh yeah, that one was good, and talk a little bit about their career. I'm like, my goodness. And he hosted some of them. He hosted lots of Mike Tyson's fights, whether, regardless of what you think of Mike Tyson, he was a great fighter, hosted lots of his fights. And so, like, going to a football game, and like you said, very American sport. And do you remember what the Eagles head coach said about football last night during the awards ceremony?
He said said something like it was the best team sport of all time.
Yeah, it's like the greatest team sport of all time. And we've talked about that just around the dinner table, that football really is a sport like none other. And I think that for boys, that it's a very important sport to some degree to be involved with. Not necessarily to go to college for or anything like that necessarily, or go to the pros, but learning how teamwork really operates. And again, I would say that this is one of those things that is an American value as well. As like in communist countries, they try to treat everybody exactly the same in everything. A doctor can get paid as much, or rather, a taxi cab driver can get paid as much as a doctor, and it's like that better be a really good ride they're giving, because if they get paid as much as a doctor, I mean, doctors are supposed to be paid to save people's lives, and in communist countries, I mean, and again, it has to do with in the NFL, not everybody can be the quarterback. How much did you hear them talking about the offensive line of the Eagles last night?
Well, the quarterback gave credit to the defense.
Yeah, the defense.
Yes, the defense. And I thought he said defense is what wins Super Bowl, or defense is what wins games and championships. And I thought that was really cool because he was on the offense and he was giving credit to the defense. And I mean, you could see the defense was massive on the Eagles. So I mean, yeah, they big guys.
Well, and to answer my own question, I recall one time they mentioned the offensive line inside of the game, namely that they had a 348-pound or 338-pound average offense. The average lineman for the Eagles was 338 pounds, but aside from that, I don't recall them talking a lot about them. But those Chiefs, their defensive line was something else, and the Eagles did a fantastic job at containing them. But how much do you hear people talk about offensive linemen? Almost never. So as an offensive lineman, what do they got to do? They got to say, hey, this is my job. It's important, even if I don't get praised as a hero. And again, like I said, I feel like that's the kind of the American way, that we do our jobs, not because of the recognition we receive, but rather because we know that it's the right thing to do. And by the way, and you get paid for your job too. I don't know if anybody would work there. Melissa, this is going to be a throwback a little bit. I remember when Joe Biden, it was either when he was running or it was when he was vice president. I think it was when he was running for president. And one of his things was that, a job's more than just being paid. It's about being able to go home to your wife and kids and saying, you know what? Everything's going to be all right. Wait, don't you need to be getting paid to be able to assure your wife and kids that everything's going to be all right? And isn't that the whole purpose of a job? Anyway, that's just a kind of a side note. If you want to comment on that, feel free to, but you don't have to.
Well, I think it's, it's just we're thankful that he's no longer in office.
Yes, because it was very hard sometimes. We always say, when he was in office, hey, everything's going to be all right, when all the prices for literally everything are rising. And the funny thing is, I've talked to a few people that don't think that things are going to change a whole lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you see Donald Trump, the good thing is you can see how much he's helping people. He's already, rescued people that were, held hostage in other countries. He's, kicked out illegals that have, done really, murderous crimes. And things have, even if things haven't gotten better personally, they've gotten better for a lot of people. And, they say he turned on the water in California, when
oh my goodness,
the governor, drained all their water out, all their water supplies. So, he's just done so many good things. And, we legitimately couldn't understand, Biden's speeches. Like, you couldn't actually understand what he said, and so, and that's not a good place, to be under the rule of somebody that no one can understand what he's saying. And so, I think just a lot of good things are happening. And, I just think, obviously, it's because he's putting God in charge.
And it's funny because we call Donald Trump our commander-in-chief right now. And he's our number one. He's the head of the executive branch. He is the guy Actually, in reality, constitutionally, he is like the number one and only guy in the executive branch, aside from maybe the vice president. And essentially, what that makes him is more or less like a law enforcement officer. So let's liken him to like a police officer in some respects. And imagine if a police officer, when you bring up the crime in your community to the police officer, and they say, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but you don't understand. These people you're complaining about that are committing crimes against you, they've had a really hard life. And they come from a country where things are really hard. So you know what? I'm not going to do anything because they've had a hard life. And you know what? You just have to deal with it because you don't understand because you're a bigot. I mean, what would you do with that police officer if that was their response to you? I mean, don't you feel like that's what it's been like for the past 4 years? That it's been like we go into the police chief and we say, hey, police chief, hey, there's these people living across town committing crimes and not facing any consequences. Could you do something about it? And they say, no, because you're a bigot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know even locally, a lot of the major crimes that we saw in the news were because people were let out of prison early. And I mean, all the time. That's what it was. Like, oh, this person was supposed to be in prison, but they were let out. And that's just what you see, And you saw people obviously all over, like, looting in stores. Mm-hmm. And that was just the way that the leadership thought, they should run the country. And so that's not really, a good idea.
On that note, I'd like to put something to rest, too, and I don't think I've commented on this on the podcast yet. Donald Trump pardoned the January 6ers, and I know that a lot of people are complaining that, hey, he's letting criminals out of jail. These people were violent. They were hurting police officers, and they were destroying property and all of that. And, okay, first of all, the January 6ers, there's a few of them that maybe did some stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, even then, the charges are really trumped up, no pun intended this time. And there's only one person that was killed on January 6th, and that happened to be a Trump supporter who was shot. And yes, I will say that there was some property that was destroyed in the act of that, granted. Nonetheless, nobody's life was really in danger except for that person who got shot. Now, for all the people that are saying that the January 6ers getting pardoned is a horrible thing, first of all, a lot of them haven't been let out of jail yet, despite their pardon, which is a crime in itself, in my opinion. And on top of that, Kamala Harris was actually paying for people that committed felonious offenses in the BLM and Antifa riots. She was paying for them to get out of prison. I mean, my goodness, people, we need to wake up in regards to these things. And, when you see one side's actually paying for the release of criminals that were caught in the act and other people getting arrested and thrown in jail for years just for being present at Washington, D.C., which is owned by the American people, by the way, you have to ask yourself, which side are you really on? Are you on the side of good? I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. Are you really on the side of good if you're supporting people paying for the release of criminals who have actually harmed people and that has burned places down and stuff, burned down people's businesses?
Yeah, and we're going through our second time reading the Bible out loud as a family, and just so many things were in Second Chronicles because I never read it straight through.
Chronicles is hard to read, by the way.
But not Second Chronicles.
Second Chronicles isn't as hard. First Chronicles is a lot of genealogy. Second Chronicles isn't as bad.
But I've come to really like it because as I read about all these kings, I thought, man, that is exactly what Donald Trump is doing. And like for King Asa, it said in 2 Chronicles chapter 14, it says he did what was good and right in the sight of the Lord, his God. He removed the pagan altars in the high places. He chopped down Asherah poles. It says he built fortified cities. No one made war with him in those days because the Lord gave him rest. And it says they built and succeeded. And so I just think, just so much of what was promoted by the previous administration was just evil and corrupt and just sinful. And just everything that they promoted was just bad. Just so much transgenderism, LGBT, all of that, and it's like Trump is tearing all that down. It's like he's tearing down the pagan altars, and he's building good things, and just so many kings I see in Second Chronicles. Like also King Hezekiah. It says he did what was good and right, in God's sight. He removed everything impure from the holy place. It says, for our ancestors were unfaithful and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord our God. They abandoned him and turned their faces away from the Lord's dwelling place and turned their backs on him. But Hezekiah, he corrected that, and it's just so refreshing, because it's like, man, that's exactly what we see, and it's really amazing to see. And so, yeah, maybe not everybody sees it, but that's kind of the way I see it.
It's funny. No, I think that's a very good analogy, especially when it comes to the transgenderism thing and the LGBT stuff, because as Doge has been going through USAID and seeing what they've been spending money on, I mean, it is remarkable. I mean, not only are they throwing money to these foreign countries that hate us, but you look at the programs, and I remember one of them was like a comic book for a foreign nation about a transgender superhero. We spent money on that as a country to fund another country to make a comic book about a transgender. What is that? I mean, what a waste. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, that's like something that you would see on The Simpsons or something, I mean, my goodness. I mean, this is so ridiculous.
And like Robert Kennedy is taking the place of a transgender health. Secretary is like, how is that?
Well, Health and Human Services, is that what it is?
Like that.
Yeah, Rachel Levine, I think her name was. I mean, my goodness, it was like, I mean, some of the people.
Story hours and stuff, it's like, we're just tearing that down,
And it makes you ask the question, because you see King Asa and King Hezekiah and King Josiah tore down the altars. It mentioned they didn't waste time. They were like, boom, let's tear these things down. Mm-hmm. God is not pleased with this. What has stopped our leaders from saying transgenderism? I mean, mind you, people can do what they want once they're adults. If they want to pretend, if a man wants to pretend that they're a woman, whatever, First of all, they shouldn't have an elected office, because that says there's something very, very wrong with our system, or be a top-level bureaucrat for that matter. And number two, I ask myself, why can't our elected officials as a whole stand against this stuff?
Yeah, it says in here, Josiah, he became king when he was 8 years old, and his 12th year, he began cleansing Judah and Jerusalem. So he was only 20 years old, and he was doing these things, So, like you said, people that are well over that age know better, and we finally have somebody that is actually going to do the right thing.
Yeah. And, the funny thing is, I know that, as I said earlier, one of the most controversial things you said is that Donald Trump is a Christian, okay? And people have disputed that. You know what? To tell the truth, as far as his faith is concerned, I believe he's a Christian. As far as his faith is concerned, it's inconsequential as to what he really is in his heart. Because when I look at presidents like George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, all these men profess to be Christians. And in their campaigns, they did a very good job at portraying themselves in their campaigns as good, godly Christian men. They got in office, and their policies were abominable. They were horrible. I mean, they ended up killing people. They ended up, accepting things into our culture. I mean, under Barack Obama, that's when gay marriage was basically mandated at a federal level. That is saying that you cannot ban, that it's essentially a right, a human right that you cannot deny the citizens of your state. I mean, and Joe Biden, he took that all to the nth degree with everything that he was allowing and everything that he was doing and everything that he was promoting. I mean, and people say that, well, Donald Trump's not really a Christian. Well, look how he's governing, though. I mean, he's a law and order guy. And people, I know that might sound scary to a lot of Christians, saying, well, that's like the Nazis. No, that's not like the Nazis. Because Donald Trump sees that we do have a law in our land. And that God, he's an orderly God. God wants law and order in our governments. He does not want the wicked to go unpunished.
Yeah, and I mean, the last time Trump was in office, 900 abortion clinics closed, and that was because of what he had, just the things that he had done, and so, I mean, most people, the things he's done would have considered it impossible.
It's wild. I remember on that note, I remember like reading one of the other kings inside of Second Chronicles. I can't remember if it was Manasseh or if it was his son or what it was, but I remember it said something about that they made their children walk through the fire. And I mean, again, in a manner of speaking, it's abortion repackaged. Yes, the children are older and grown up, and he killed them. Well, I mean, they don't necessarily be that much older. It could be children, and we have in Minnesota that Tim Walz signed legislation legalizing the idea that Ralph Northam wanted, that, hey, if a woman has a baby and she hadn't decided to have an abortion up to the point that she gives birth, after she gives birth, they'll take the baby into the other room, have a discussion with the mother as to whether to end that baby's life or not. And the funny thing is, it's under the same pretense. They believe through having abortions that their fields would be blessed and their lives would be blessed, and through their sacrifices, that is, in the Old Testament. And with abortion, they say, hey, mother, if you have this abortion, your life will be better. It's the same thing, just repackaged. And and the fact that Donald Trump, I mean, again, regardless of what the platform was, I mean, he's done more for the pro-life movement thus far than any other president. I mean, I was blown away when his Supreme Court, I mean, let's face it, he ended up appointing 3 Supreme Court justices in his first term in office. And because of his Supreme Court selections, they did something I never thought was going to happen, and that was to overturn Roe v. Wade. I mean, just an absolutely remarkable achievement. And we got a long way to go in that regard, but still an incredible achievement that, had it not been for Donald Trump, we wouldn't have had that.
Yeah, and we listened to a message earlier and about Nehemiah building the wall, and the pastor said, are you one of those people that are just jealous and trying to stop good from happening? Or you just, want to say it's bad when it's really good? And I think that's something that sometimes we see in our culture. People see, Donald Trump succeeding and doing so many good things. And sometimes people just want to get jealous and say, you know what, I don't like this. I don't like that he can do so much good. And I think we're to, people are good to work with Nehemiah and helping, build the wall, helping good, what God wants to see as good. And, I think we don't need to be jealous because, God put Donald Trump there and to do good, and we get to help.
And I think that's a good thing to end on there, that we saw something miraculous happen when Donald Trump's life was spared at the assassination attempt. The bullet that whizzed by his ear, nearly taking his life, and just barely missed him. And we know that was the hand of God at work. Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, that was the hand of God at work. Whether that was for better or for worse, God's plan is being played out in his life. Now, having said that, if God preserved Donald Trump's life for greater purposes, if you are living and breathing today, God's purposes are playing out in your life. He's not going to take you until he's through with you. So be encouraged in that. I mean, regardless of what happens in these next couple of years under the Trump administration, no matter what happens in the next couple of years as far as the NFL or the NCAA or the NBA or the MLB or whatever it might be, that, don't get too fixated on those things, because the truth of the matter is that God is working in your life, and you got to be asking yourself, are you working toward good? Are you building the kingdom? Or is it something where you are wallowing in your own misery? And we don't want people wallowing in their own misery. We want people to be excited. We want people to be happy about their lives. We want people to be encouraged by the word of God and to know that he is standing up for you if you are standing with him. So with that, first of all, I want to say that we're going to be playing out today to the music of Daniel Pennell. I will post a link where you can find his music. If you'd like to check out some more of his stuff, I think that he gave us a wonderful theme song for this show that I'm sharing with you right now. And I would like you to be able to check out his other work as well, as he's done some really incredible things. And Melissa, do you have anything you want to say before we sign out?
That's it. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for being with us at the Bill Sang Podcast. Be blessed.
The truth, the life, the way. Hallelujah. The life, the way. Hallelujah. We worship your name, Alpha and Omega, forever the same.